I am Elon Musk, founder of Tesla and SpaceX. Let me tell you about a decision that most people thought was insane. In 2002, I had just sold PayPal to eBay for $1.5 billion. My share was $165 million. I was 31 years old. By any conventional measure, I had won the game. I could have retired to a private island, spent my days doing whatever wealthy people do when they stop working. Golf, maybe. Collect cars. Travel the world. Nobody would have questioned that choice. Instead, I took almost everything I had and split it between two companies that most experts said would fail. I put 100 million into SpaceX, a rocket company. When everyone knew rockets were the domain of governments with unlimited budget. I put 70 million into Tesla, an electric car company, when dozens of electric vehicle startups had already failed spectacularly. I kept just enough money to pay rent and eat. People asked me if I was having a mental breakdown. Financial advisors told me I was throwing away my fortune. Friends pulled me aside at parties to ask if I was okay. And I understood their concern. From the outside, it looked like I was gambling everything on two of the riskiest ventures imaginable. But here is what they did not understand. I was not gambling. I was investing in the only things that felt worth doing. You see, money was never the goal. Money was the tool. And once you have enough tools, the question becomes, what are you building? That is the question most people never ask themselves because they are too busy acquiring more tools. More money, more security, more comfort. They think the tools are the point, but tools without purpose are just clutter in your garage. I looked at the world and saw two problems that actually mattered. Two problems that, if left unsolved, meant everything else we were doing was temporary. First, humanity is confined to one planet. Every person who has ever lived, every civilization, every achievement, every work of art, every scientific discovery, all of it exists on this one fragile sphere floating in space. And that sphere has been hit by asteroids before. It will be hit again. Even if we avoid cosmic disasters, we face problems of our own making. Climate change, resource depletion, political instability. We are living in a single point of failure. Second, we are destroying the planet we have. We are burning fossil fuels at a rate that is fundamentally unsustainable, changing the chemistry of our atmosphere, warming the oceans, acidifying the water, driving species to extinction. And we are doing this because our entire civilization runs on combustion engines and coal power plants. We are heating our planet to power our lives, and if we do not change that, we are going to make Earth uninhabitable anyway. So I had a choice. I could keep my money and watch these problems get worse, or I could risk everything trying to solve them. And when you frame it that way, it is not really a choice at all. What is the point of having resources if you do not use them for something that matters? No. SpaceX was not about building cool rockets. It was about making humanity a multiplanetary species. It was about ensuring that consciousness, this unlikely and precious thing that somehow emerged from billions of years of physics and chemistry, does not go extinct because we were too cautious to leave our homeworld. Mars is not a backup plan. Mars is the first step toward becoming a civilization that can survive beyond a single planet. And yes, the odds were terrible. 3 of our first rockets failed. We nearly went bankrupt. People mocked us constantly, but the mission was worth the risk. Tesla was not about making luxury electric cars for wealthy people. It was about proving that sustainable transport could be better than combustion engines. It was about accelerating the transition to electric vehicles across the entire industry. And it worked. Every major car manufacturer now has electric vehicle programs because Tesla proved it could be done profitably. We did not just build a car company. We changed what the auto industry believed was possible. Now let me be clear about something. I am not saying everyone should risk their life savings on moonshot projects. That would be irresponsible advice. What I am saying is this. Your work should be in service of something larger than your own comfort. It should matter, not just to you, not just to your bank account, but to the world. Most people never find their mission because they are afraid of what it might cost them. They want the satisfaction of meaningful work, but they also want safety, predictability, comfort, and I understand that. Security is important. But here is what I have learned. The things worth doing are usually hard, risky, and uncertain. If it were easy and safe, someone would have already done it. You know what is truly risky? Spending 40 years doing work that does not matter, collecting a paycheck, playing it safe, and then looking back and realizing you never did anything you actually cared about. That is the risk nobody talks about. The risk of a life spent optimizing for comfort instead of impact. I meet a lot of people who tell me they want to do something meaningful, but they are waiting for the right time. They are waiting until they have more money, more experience, more certainty, and I tell them, there is no right time. There is only now and later usually becomes never. The perfect conditions you are waiting for do not exist. You will never have complete information. You will never have zero risk. You will never feel completely ready. When I started SpaceX, I did not know how to build rockets. I had to learn. I read textbooks. I hired people smarter than me. I failed repeatedly and learned from each failure. When I started Tesla, I did not know how to manufacture cars at scale. We almost died learning. But the mission was clear, and clarity of mission is more important than completeness of knowledge. Here is what happens when your work is driven by mission instead of money. When you hit obstacles, and you will hit massive obstacles, you do not quit. You cannot quit because the mission is still there. The problem you are trying to solve does not go away just because the work is hard. In 2008, both SpaceX and Tesla nearly failed simultaneously. I had to choose which company would get the last of my money. I was going through a divorce. The economy was collapsing. I was sleeping on the factory floor at Tesla and flying back and forth to SpaceX to manage crises. It was the worst period of my life, but I never thought about quitting because the mission had not changed. Humanity still needed to become multiplanetary. The world still needed sustainable energy. The problems were still real, still urgent, still worth solving. So we kept going. We borrowed money. Worse, we made desperate deals. We worked impossible hours. And eventually we survived. Both companies survived, and then they thrived. If those companies had been about making me rich, I would have shut them down in 2008. The rational financial decision would have been to cut my losses and preserve whatever capital remained. But they were never about money. They were about solving problems that mattered. And when you are solving problems that matter, you find resources you did not know you had. You find strength you did not know existed. You find people who believe in the mission and want to help. Money-driven work has a ceiling. Once you make enough money, the motivation disappears. You can only buy so many houses, so many cars, so many vacations before it all becomes meaningless. But mission-driven work has no ceiling. The problem is never fully solved. There is always more to do, always a bigger challenge, always a better version of the solution. That is what keeps you going for decades instead of years. I want to talk about how to find your mission because I think this is where most people get stuck. They think their mission has to be as ambitious as colonizing Mars or solving climate change. It does not. Your mission has to matter to you and it has to help other people. That is it. Those are the only requirements. A teacher whose mission is to help kids discover their potential is doing work that matters. A doctor whose mission is to heal people and reduce suffering is doing work that matters. An engineer whose mission is to build products that improve lives is doing work that matters. The scale of your mission is less important than the authenticity of it. Here is how you know if something is your real mission. Ask yourself, would you do this work even if you knew you would never be recognized for it? Would you do it if no one ever thanked you? Would you do it if it took 20 years longer than you expected? If the answer is yes, you have found something real. If the answer depends on external validation or reward, you have found a job, not a mission. Your mission should scare you a little bit. It should feel too big, too ambitious, maybe impossible. Because if it feels easy and comfortable, it is probably not important enough. The problems worth solving are the ones that make you think. Someone should really fix this, followed immediately by the terrifying realization. I guess that someone is me. I get asked constantly about work-life balance. People want to know how to pursue a big mission while also having time for family, hobbies, rest. And my answer frustrates people because it is honest. You probably cannot have both at the same level of intensity. Something has to give. When you are building something that matters, it consumes you. Wonderful. It has to. Because you are competing against people who are also consumed by their missions. And if you are working 40 hours a week while they are working 80, they are going to move faster. But here is the thing people miss. When your work is your mission, it does not feel like sacrifice. Yes, I work 80 to 100 hours most weeks. Yes, I miss things. Yes, there are costs. But I am not suffering. I am doing exactly what I want to be doing. I'm solving problems I care about with people I respect in service of a future I believe in. That is not work-life balance. That is life. And work is not separate from life when the work matters this much. Now, I am not saying everyone should work 100-hour weeks. I am saying, be honest about what you actually want. If you want a big mission, accept that it requires big commitment. If you want balance, accept that your impact will be more modest. Both are valid choices, but you cannot have maximum impact with minimum effort. Physics does not work that way, and neither does achievement. Let me tell you what happens when you build something mission-driven instead of money-driven. You attract different people. At SpaceX and Tesla, we get applications from the best engineers in the world, not because we pay the most, we often do not, but because the mission is exciting. People want to work on hard problems that matter. They want to feel like their work is contributing to something larger than quarterly earnings reports. Money motivates people up to a point. Once their basic needs are met, once they have security and comfort, money stops being a good motivator. What motivates people after that is purpose, mastery, and autonomy. They want to work on things that matter, get better at difficult skills, and have some control over how they do it. Mission-driven companies provide all three. When SpaceX successfully landed a rocket for the first time, the whole team erupted in celebration. Grown engineers were crying. Not because they got bonuses, although they did, but because we had done something people said was impossible. We had taken a step toward making humanity multi-planetary. The emotion was about the mission, not the money. Compare that to a company optimizing for shareholder value. When they hit their quarterly target, does anyone cry? Does anyone cry? Does anyone feel like they contributed to something meaningful? Or do they just feel relieved they hit their numbers and get to keep their jobs for another quarter? There is a difference between mercenary work and missionary work, and you can feel it in the culture. Here is what I want you to understand. The world does not need more people optimizing for personal wealth. We have plenty of those. What the world needs is more people willing to tackle hard problems, to risk failure, to work on things that matter, even when success is uncertain. We need people who ask not what will make me rich, but what will make me useful. Think about the problems you see in the world that make you angry or sad. The inefficiencies that frustrate you. The injustices that offend you. The suffering that breaks your heart. Those feelings are signals. They are pointing you toward your mission. Whatever makes you angry enough to want to fix it, that is probably what you should be working on. For me, it was the realization that humanity has all our eggs in one basket. That we are a single-planet species living on a planet we are actively damaging. That made me angry because the solution is technically possible, but we were not working on it seriously. So I started working on it. Not because I thought I would get rich, I was already rich, but because someone needed to and I had the resources to try. You might not have $100 million to invest in your mission. That is fine. Most missions do not require that. What they require is time, energy, focus, and persistence. What they require is that you care more about the outcome than the obstacles. What they require is that you start before you feel ready. I started SpaceX by reading rocket science textbooks and calling people who knew more than I did. I started Tesla by funding a small team and learning about battery technology and manufacturing. Neither company started with a perfect plan. They started with a clear mission and a willingness to figure it out along the way. The biggest mistake people make is waiting for permission, waiting for someone to tell them their idea is good, their mission is valid, their plan will work. No one is going to give you that permission. No one gave it to me. I just started building and dealt with the criticism as it came. And it came constantly. People told me SpaceX would never work because rockets were too expensive and too complicated for a private company. I ignored them and built rockets anyway. People told me Tesla would fail because electric cars were golf carts and nobody wanted them. Oh yeah, well, because the mission was worth pursuing, even if success was uncertain. And here is what happened. By pursuing these missions with everything I had, by refusing to quit when things got hard, We proved the critics wrong. SpaceX now launches more rockets than any other organization in the world. We have reduced launch costs by 90%. We have made reusable rockets routine. We are building Starship, which will take humans to Mars. Tesla is the most valuable car company in the world. We have forced the entire auto industry to take electric vehicles seriously. Solar and battery storage are now legitimate industries. None of that happened because I was smarter than everyone else. It happened because I was more committed to the mission than I was afraid of failure. That is the difference. Most people are more afraid of failing than they are excited about succeeding. So they play it safe. They optimize for comfort, and they never find out what they were capable of. Your mission will cost you something. It will cost you time, energy, probably money. It might cost you relationships with people who do not understand why you care so much. It will definitely cost you comfort and security. But here is what you get in return. A life that means something. Work that matters. Satisfaction of knowing you tried to make things better instead of just consuming what others built. When I am old and looking back on my life, I will not remember the money I made or the companies I built. I will remember whether we made it to Mars. I will remember whether we accelerated the transition to sustainable energy. I will remember whether I used my resources and abilities to push humanity forward or just to make myself comfortable. That is the question I want you to ask yourself. Not how can I get rich, but how can I be useful? Not what will make me successful by conventional standards, but what will make my life meaningful by my own standards. Not what is safe and comfortable, but what is important and worth the risk. The mission bigger than money is whatever mission you cannot stop thinking about. That is the problem you see that keeps you up at night. It is the future you want to exist even if you do not get credit for creating it. It is the work you would do even if no one was watching, because the work itself matters more than the recognition. Find that mission. Commit to it completely. Accept that it will be hard, that you will fail sometimes, that people will doubt you. Do it anyway, because at the end of your life, the only thing that will matter is whether you spent your time on things that mattered. Money comes and goes. Comfort is temporary, but the impact you make, the problems you solve, the future you help create, that lasts. That is what I risked everything for. Not to get richer. I was already rich, but to make sure that what I did with my life actually mattered. To ensure that humanity becomes a multi-planetary species. To accelerate the transition to sustainable energy. To help secure a future worth living in. You do not need to build rocket ships or car companies to have a mission that matters. You just need to find the thing you care about enough to dedicate your life to, and then have the courage to actually do it. The world does not need more people playing it safe. The world needs more people willing to risk everything for something that matters. So ask yourself, what is your mission? What problem do you see that you cannot ignore? What future do you want to help create? And then ask the harder question, what are you willing to risk to make it happen? Because that is where mission begins. Not in grand declarations or perfect plans, but in the willingness to risk comfort for meaning, safety for impact, money for mission. That is the choice that changes everything. That is the choice that changed my life. And that is the choice that can change yours. Let me go deeper into what happens when you operate from mission instead of money, because this is not just philosophical. This is practical. This changes how you make every decision, every day. When money is your goal, you optimize for short-term gains. You take the job that pays more even if the work is meaningless. You choose the project that has guaranteed returns even if it does not move the needle on anything important. You play politics to climb ladders even if the ladder is leaning against the wrong building. And this is rational behavior if money is your metric. But it is a trap. The trap is this: money is infinite. There is no amount of money that feels like enough. I have met billionaires who are stressed about making more billions. I have seen people with hundreds of millions who feel poor compared to people with billions. When money is your scorecard, you are playing an unwinnable game because there is always someone richer, and the number in your bank account does not actually mean anything beyond a certain point of security and comfort. Mission is different. Mission has clear metrics. Either you solved the problem, or you did not. Either you moved humanity closer to being multiplanetary, or you did not. Either you accelerated sustainable energy, or you did not. The scoreboard is reality, not your net worth. And that changes everything about how you operate. At SpaceX, we do not make decisions based on what will maximize quarterly profits. We make decisions based on what will get us to Mars faster and more reliably. Sometimes those decisions cost us money in the short term. We invested billions in developing reusable rockets when we could have kept using expendable ones and maintained better margins. But reusability is essential to making Mars colonization economically feasible, so we did it anyway. Mission determined the decision. At Tesla, we do not make decisions based on what will make the most profit per vehicle. We make decisions based on what will accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles globally. That is why we open-sourced our patents. Conventional business wisdom says you protect your intellectual property. We gave ours away because if other manufacturers can use our technology to make electric cars faster, that serves the mission even if it does not serve our competitive advantage. People thought I was crazy for open sourcing Tesla patents. They said I was giving away billions in potential licensing revenue. But they were thinking about money. I was thinking about mission. If the mission is to accelerate sustainable transport, you want more electric cars on the road, not fewer. You want competition because competition drives innovation and reduces costs and increases adoption. The mission is not Tesla dominating the market. The mission is electric vehicles dominating the market. Big difference. This is what mission-driven thinking looks like in practice. You make decisions that might hurt you competitively but help the larger goal. You share information that might benefit rivals because the rising tide lifts all boats. You invest in things that have no clear return on investment because they advance the mission. And paradoxically, this often leads to better business outcomes because people respect mission-driven companies more, customers are more loyal, employees work harder, and innovation happens faster. But you have to really believe in the mission. You cannot fake this. People can tell when a company puts mission in their marketing materials, but optimizes for profit in their decision-making. They can feel the inauthenticity. Real mission-driven work means making real sacrifices for the mission. It means doing things that do not make financial sense in service of the larger goal. I want to talk about fear because fear is what stops most people from pursuing their real mission. They are afraid of failing, afraid of losing money, afraid of what people will think. Be afraid of wasting years on something that does not work out. These fears are legitimate. I felt all of them. But here is what I learned about fear. Fear is information. It tells you that what you are doing matters, that the stakes are real, that you are risking something valuable. If you are not afraid, you are probably not doing anything important. Comfort and significance do not coexist. You get to pick one. I was terrified when I invested everything into SpaceX and Tesla. I knew the odds. I knew most startups fail. I knew aerospace and automotive were incredibly difficult industries with high capital requirements and entrenched competitors. The fear was rational, but I had to ask myself, what am I more afraid of, losing money or spending my life on things that do not matter? When you frame it that way, the fear of insignificance becomes greater than the fear of failure. So I became more afraid of playing it safe than I was of losing everything. Because losing money is temporary. You can always make more money. But losing years of your life to work that does not matter, that is permanent. You do not get those years back. This is why I tell people, do not ask if you can afford to take the risk. Ask if you can afford not to. What is the cost of spending the next 20 years doing work you do not care about? What is the cost of reaching the end of your life and realizing you never even tried to do what you actually wanted to do? For most people, that cost is higher than the cost of trying and failing. Let me talk about the people around you, because they will have opinions about your mission. When I told people I was starting a rocket company, the most common response was laughter. Rockets? You? You are a software guy. You do not know anything about aerospace. You are going to lose all your money. The experts all said it was impossible. Friends expressed concern. Investors passed. The media mocked, and I understood their skepticism. I did not have a background in rockets. I did not have industry connections. I did not have government contracts. From the outside, it looked delusional. But here is what they did not know. I had done the math. I had studied the physics. I had talked to people who had built rockets. I knew it was possible even if it was difficult. You will face the same thing when you pursue your mission. People will doubt you. They will list all the reasons why it will not work. They will be genuinely concerned for your well-being. And you have to learn to distinguish between useful feedback and noise. Useful feedback comes from people who understand what you are trying to do and have relevant expertise. If a rocket scientist tells me I am making a technical error, I listen. If a manufacturing expert identifies a problem in our production process, I listen. This is valuable information that can save me from mistakes. Noise comes from people who do not understand the mission, do not have relevant expertise, and are projecting their own fears onto your situation. If someone who has never built anything tells me I am going to fail because most startups fail, that is noise. If someone who has never taken a significant risk tells me I am being irresponsible, that is noise. You have to learn to filter this out. The problem is that noise often comes from people who care about you, your family, your friends, your colleagues. They genuinely do not want to see you get hurt or fail or lose money. So they encourage you to play it safe. Then you have to love them for caring while also ignoring their advice because they are optimizing for your safety, not your mission. This is lonely sometimes. When you are pursuing something difficult and important, you will spend time around people who do not understand why you are working so hard on something so uncertain. They will think you are obsessed. They will worry about you. They will suggest you slow down, take breaks, be more balanced. And you have to smile and nod and then get back to work because the mission does not care about their comfort level. But here is the beautiful thing. When you find your mission, you also find your people. You find other people who care about the same problem. You find engineers who want to build rockets, designers who want to make electric cars beautiful, scientists who want to solve climate change. These people understand. They do not think you are crazy. They think you are doing exactly what you should be doing. And suddenly, you are not alone anymore. Building SpaceX and Tesla introduced me to some of the most brilliant, passionate, committed people I have ever known. People who work 100-hour weeks not because I force them to, but because they believe in what we are building. People who turn down higher-paying jobs at other companies because they want to work on this mission. People who cry when a rocket lands successfully because they understand what it means for humanity. You cannot buy that with money. You cannot create that culture by optimizing for profit. That only happens when people share a mission that matters more than money. And when you have people like that, you can accomplish things that seem impossible. Let me tell you what I think the world needs right now. The world needs people willing to work on hard problems. Climate change is a hard problem. Making humanity multiplanetary is a hard problem. Developing sustainable energy is a hard problem. Curing diseases is a hard problem. Fixing education is a hard problem. These problems will not solve themselves. They require people who care enough to dedicate their careers to solving them. But most talented people do not work on hard problems. They work on profitable problems. They go to Wall Street to optimize trading algorithms. They go to tech companies to optimize ad clicks. They go to consulting firms to optimize corporate efficiency. And I understand why. These jobs pay well. They are prestigious. They are safer than trying to solve hard problems that might not have solutions. But we are wasting talent. We have brilliant minds working on trivial problems because trivial problems pay better than important ones. And I think that is backwards. I think the hardest problems should attract the best people. I think we should celebrate the engineers trying to develop fusion energy more than the ones trying to make social media more addictive. This is why I talk about mission. Because I want talented people to ask themselves, what is the most important problem I could work on? Not the most profitable, not the safest, not the most prestigious, the most important. And then I want them to have the courage to actually work on it. Your mission does not have to be as ambitious as Mars colonization. Maybe your mission is improving education in your community. Maybe it is developing better medical treatments. Maybe it is creating art that helps people process difficult emotions. Maybe it is building tools that make other people more productive. All of these are valid missions if they matter to you and help others. The test is simple. If you succeeded completely at your mission, would the world be meaningfully better? If yes, and if you care enough to dedicate significant time and energy to it, then you have found something worth doing. The question is whether you will actually do it. Most people will not. They will think about it, they will talk about it, they will make plans. But when it comes time to take the risk, to invest the time, to sacrifice the comfort, they will choose safety. And I do not judge them for that. Safety is important, especially if you have people depending on you. But I do think it is sad when talented people spend their entire lives playing it safe and never find out what they could have accomplished. So here is my challenge to you. Identify the problem that bothers you most, the thing that makes you angry or sad when you think about it, the inefficiency you cannot stop noticing, the injustice that offends your sense of how the world should work. That is probably pointing you toward your mission. Then ask yourself, what would it take to solve this problem, or at least make meaningful progress on it? Not what would be easier, safe, or profitable, but what would actually work. Be honest about the difficulty. Be realistic about the resources required, but do not dismiss it just because it is hard. And then ask the final question. Are you willing to risk failure? Are you willing to sacrifice comfort for the chance to make a difference? If the answer is yes, then start. Not tomorrow. Not when conditions are perfect. Not when you feel ready. Start now with whatever resources you have. This is how missions begin. With one person seeing a problem and deciding to work on it. With one person willing to risk looking foolish, failing publicly, losing money, spending years on something that might not work. That is all it takes. One person who cares enough to try. I started SpaceX because I saw that humanity needed to become multi-planetary, and nobody was working on it seriously. I started Tesla because I saw that sustainable transport was possible, but the industry was not pursuing. I started with those observations and a willingness to risk everything to make progress on them. Everything else came after. You can do the same with your mission. You do not need my resources. You need clarity about what matters and courage to pursue it. Those things are free. They just require honesty and commitment, so find your mission.
The one bigger than money, the one that matters more than comfort, the one you cannot stop thinking about.
And then do what most people will not. Actually pursue it with everything you have. That is how you change the world. Not by playing it safe and accumulating money, but by finding something worth dedicating your life to and having the courage to actually do it. That is the mission bigger than money. That is your why. Find it and commit to it completely. Everything else is just details.